Hello.
Hi, Blake.
Hi, Cayla. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing okay.
I know you just had a big move.
Yeah, it's this we're getting
That,
there.
yeah, that's beautiful. Did you put the most beautiful organized thing behind you?
That was all Hannah.
Yeah.
If
No, but I mean, you put it behind you for today. You're like, there is
yeah.
a part of my life that looks really good.
Yeah, this is the front room of the house. It's supposed to be a living room. It's going to be all studio because it's got the best light. Hannah organized it before she left because if I had my way, I'd probably never ever unpack. I'm fine living out of boxes.
Yeah, I've been teaching all day, so my brain is a little scrambled, but
Yeah.
we'll be okay.
I like what's going on behind you too.
Yeah, thanks. I'm in my studio. Kate, I'm
Yeah.
in my studio.
Oh, that's your studio. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. So I mean, I just brought a show home, so it's a little chaotic, but
Mm,
Whoa, look at that. Oh, it's
yeah.
amazing.
that's a nice space.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Do you guys know Cayla and I essentially work for the same university, but we have never met in person?
You're kidding.
We work at different campuses
Yeah.
and like in different programs, even though we kind of have the exact same, we have very similar titles. It's pretty interesting. I mean, Kate is more important than I am, but
Sure.
Cayla is way more important than I am. Yeah, it's like we're at separate colleges in the same university, so
Right.
yeah. And hi, Ruthann. Hi,
Hey,
everybody.
Beauvais.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. This should be fun. Glad we've got spring recess tomorrow.
That's great. Yeah.
We just came back, so we're just in the April intensity.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they don't call it Good Friday, they call it spring recess to make it more secular, but yeah, I didn't have class today and the university's closed tomorrow,
Good.
so I'm gonna put it to good use.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So
So,
Blake, you're just gonna move us ahead.
yep. And I'm going to do a real brief introduction. Laura is leading us off, and she said that she's got her timing down to such a precise level that she wants to host at first. So I'm going to let her do that, and then we'll switch over to me sharing. Um,
Okay. And
Mine
we're
is
going for 10 minutes. That's our goal. Our goal is
that
10
that's
or
the
less.
goal. I said 10. I fully expect it'll be more like 12 to 14, and
Okay.
then we might have to pull out the shepherd's hook. But yeah,
Mine's also scripted so that it's on time.
awesome.
So I have like two computers set up. I can
Mhm.
just tell you when to flip forward.
Yeah. Yep.
That's
That's
it?
all I
Okay.
need.
All right, cool.
Or as you'll see in the next slide.
Right. That's great. Yeah.
I'm not scripted, but I'll run a timer to keep myself
Sure.
on
I
time.
mean, we've got a little bit of time built in. If everybody sticks to 12 minutes, that still gives us more than 20 minutes for questions at the end if we're going the full 2 hours. Um, we just can't have everybody going 20, so
Yeah. And you'll spotlight whoever's the speaker when they're up. You know how to do
yeah.
that. As moderator,
Remind
you'll
me how
get
to do that, Beauvais.
if you open participants in the sidebar, you can spotlight someone
Yeah.
so that when they're speaking, they're the oh,
Yeah.
everything we learned during COVID days.
Yeah. Thank you. Got it. Yeah, I don't have to drive these very often. Most of my Zoom activities right now are, you know, private meetings, and then Miles is doing a lot of the nighttime virtual events. So I don't have to get too fancy with it. That's helpful though.
I'm going to work on my studio lighting here.
Yeah. Well, I like this room, but it has no overhead lighting, so it's going to get progressively darker in here as we go on.
Um, I can show you my
So is mine.
back there. This is my studio.
Yeah, that's great.
Nice.
A little over 3 years ago, we moved to get space for us. I tell people we're at a time in our lives where we need to upsize because eventually I'm not going to have the footprint of a university to keep all of my crap in. So
Sure. Yeah. We just moved into a bigger house, but downsized considerably. This is going to be Hannah's last semester in academia, and we're not probably not going to be exhibiting as often. So there's 20 years worth of stuff that's
Hmm.
finding its way elsewhere.
So what's the next chapter?
We don't really know.
Is this
She's
because of program closure?
not exactly. It's because of pressures at the university with compression and things and a lot of other things. But um, Hannah's gonna find a 9 to 5 doing something else and focus on her comics and do a job that she can put her handful of hours in a day and walk away rather than it taking over everything all the time.
It's sort of like being a pastor or minister to a church sometimes.
Mm,
There's a lot of pastoral care in academia.
yeah.
My students are installing their senior theses right now, and there was a lot of tears yesterday. There was a lot of emotional labor. Their work looks great. It
Yeah.
wasn't even like a big deal. You're like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was to them, but Hannah's comics are amazing too. So more time for Hannah's comics
Yeah.
it's a great plan.
I think this is Laura Berman. We're gonna find out. Other people are hanging out in the waiting room, so want to make sure I'm letting in. Yes. All right. That was Laura Berman. Hi.
Hi, Blake.
Hi there.
Did you
So,
want me to do you want me to start with you know, or
um,
just do a
yeah,
switch?
if everybody that is in is set up to share. So if you want to set up your screen to share, we can do that right now.
Yeah.
Um, and I
So there
think
was
I'll
the presentation that we put together. I thought you were going to advance. You'll advance those when we get to
yes,
that.
but like I
Okay.
said, Laura, since she's leading off and has
Okay.
everything down to the second, she's going to share hers
Okay.
and go through hers, and then I'll take over from there.
Do you want should I leave it up for now? Is that okay or?
Yep, that's great. And then the only person who's missing is Hilary, who said she might be a few minutes late. I think she's going to be joining us from the road. So, but that'll be an easy one because she didn't put any pictures up. She's gonna improvise. So make it
Are
easy
we
on
also
me.
waiting for Jasmine?
Oh, you're right. Yep, we sure are. And I don't see them in the waiting room so far.
Jasmine is truly being independent.
Okay. This is going to be it's going to be fun. And it's 6 o'clock. There we go.
Thanks for doing this, Blake.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Fulbrights are the best. Hopefully lots of other people get them.
Hi, Jasmine.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Happy to have you. I am just about to let everybody into the room. So everybody settled, everybody happy with their studio lighting and things now? Awesome. Excellent. Welcome, folks. Don't mind me. I am monitoring as folks are coming into the waiting room. We'll get started in just 1 second. Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm Blake Sanders. I am SGCI's Executive Director. Thank you for joining us tonight for Spotlight on the Fulbright. I'm joined this evening with Laura Berman, Kate Copeland, Ruthann Godollei, Jasmine Linder, Cayla is it broccoli? uh, Hilary Lorenz will be
Like
joining.
the vegetable.
Excellent. Hilary Lorenz will be joining us shortly. Katie Baldwin and Beauvais Lyons will be batting cleanup. And Laura is driving this show for just a moment. Laura, you mind going to the next slide when you get a second? Oh. So, focusing on the Fulbright this evening is one of many things that SGCI is doing to emphasize the international in SGCI. There's a lot of other things that we're doing right now, including other virtual events that are coming up soon, themed portfolios in Portugal and in Catalonia, sorry. And then excursions to Spain and Thailand. And we just opened up the raffle for a residency in Venice. Everybody that contributes to the raffle, whether you win or not, you're contributing to sending the winner to Venice. So you can check all those out on the SGCI website. And with that, I am going to hand this off to Laura, who pitched this idea. And that's another thing to remind you of. We are always looking for other ideas for virtual events and for content through SGCI. You can send those to help@sgci.org or sgcinternational.org. Take it away, Laura.
Thank you, Blake. Thanks to Southern Graphics Council International for your invitation to bring us together today. It's an honor to be in everyone's company. I'm speaking with you today from my home and studio in Kansas City, which is on the ancestral homelands of the Kaw Nation, the Osage Nation, and Shawnee Tribe. Many other tribal nations have ties to the Kansas City region through treaty and forced marches. I give gratitude to the elders past and present and support the continuing relationship between Indigenous people and this land. I contacted SGCI with the idea to bring us all together today in hopes that we can demystify the Fulbright process and experience and inspire others in the print community to apply to these extraordinary opportunities. After a really lengthy application and interview process, finding out that I had received the Fulbright Award was an amazing and celebratory feeling. I applied in September 2022. I interviewed for the position in March 2023 and received the award and contract a couple months after that, with the plan for my Fulbright to begin in December 2024. Reality set in really fast. Suddenly, I had a new deadline-driven job, especially with the planning required to bring my husband and 2 children along with me. We basically had to plan a full move to Australia. This included housing, schools, insurance, banking, healthcare, travel info, our personal and official documents, and everything we would need for 6 months, both at home and abroad. I'm not going to mislead you. This took hundreds of hours to plan at this scale. It was actually a relief to get on a plane for 17 hours, finally to fly from Houston to Sydney, arriving just in time for New Year's in the Sydney harbor. Something that kept me going during the 8 months of intensive planning to get there was our Australian landlord's garden. Robert planted a spring garden for our family at his apartment, which would be in full bloom upon our arrival in December, aka midsummer in Australia. Knowing those little plants were there growing just for us while we sweated all the planning details, and also knowing that a stranger was caring for our family in such a kind way from across the world buoyed us. It was also an early lesson in trust while navigating new experiences, from how the air smelled to bird calls, conversational slang, road signage, flat whites, flowers, architecture. Everything was both familiar but very different all at once. Oh, sorry. We navigated our experiences with curiosity and embraced all the newness. Canberra, I worked at the University of Canberra. Canberra is the capital of the nation of Australia. It's a planned city and it's about only 100 years old. It's also full of all the national monuments, museums, national gardens, national libraries, government structures, parliament is there. The list goes on. This also includes the US consulate in Australia. The Fulbright Australia Gala event, which honors each year's Australian and US Fulbright awardees, is held in Canberra. When I was there in 2024, US Ambassador to Australia Caroline Kennedy presided. Meeting Dr. Kennedy underscored both the honor and tradition of the Fulbright program. Indeed, it was her father, President Kennedy, who signed the Fulbright-Hays Act into law in 1961, which expanded and strengthened the program's global impact in the context of foreign policy and relations. The Fulbright position is a diplomatic one. It's meant to foster cross-cultural exchange and collaboration. I was accepted as a senior scholar in the Fulbright Australia program at the Center for Creative and Cultural Research at the University of Canberra. This is not an art program, FYI. This was a scholarly research position that I was in. The school ended up being the perfect host for my interdisciplinary research on color and contemporary printmaking from the Australian perspective. The campus is really lovely, and a family of kangaroos lived outside my building. You can kind of see them in this photo on the right, the building where my office was. My position at UC was 4 months long. During this time, I participated in the CCCR's programs and events. I utilized the college's resources for my research and met and interviewed numerous artists, print curators, and print scholars in the area. I presented my research at numerous institutions, including Australian National University, the University of Canberra, and also at the Printopia Festival in New Zealand, where I was a featured event speaker. The Printopia Festival occurs annually in Auckland, New Zealand, for about 2 to 3 days, where artists gather to share prints, learn through workshops, and present ideas. The festival connects printmaking with a larger audience, strengthens the important and longstanding print community throughout the Asia-Pacific region, and inspires innovation in the print field. I highly recommend attending if you can. Back in Canberra, I spent every Tuesday at the National Gallery of Art in the Kenneth E. Tyler Collection and Archive and in the Museum Library, researching books, artwork, and ephemera related to my topics. This included a deep study of the making of Helen Frankenthaler's prints with Tyler graphics and learning about printmaking's history through Australian artists such as Margaret Preston and Tony Albert. Albert is a contemporary artist whose work reinterprets Preston's seminal relief prints through the lens of decolonialization. An acute awareness of the old Indigenous ways of depicting the world and new contemporary ways of experiencing the world were present in much of the art-related experiences I had in Australia. Through the lens of my research on color and printmaking, I learned about important prints in Australia art history, such as Bauhaus educator Ludwig Hirschfeld Mack's iconic work made in an internment camp he lived in Australia during World War II, and political activist Kevin Gilbert's self-taught relief print practice, which he began with rustic materials like spoons and floor linoleum while he was incarcerated. Numerous print publishers in Australia have spent their entire careers working with Aboriginal artists and enabling their work to be shared around the world through prints, including Basil Hall Editions in Canberra, who I met with numerous times. A significant collection of Basil Hall's prints was recently required by the Klugeroo Aboriginal Arts Collection at the University of Virginia just a few years ago. A fun fact about Basil's studio is that the artist Kevin Gilbert's granddaughter is now one of Basil's printing assistants. I also met with Michael Kimpson of Cicada Press in Sydney and toured an exhibition of his work, both as an artist and a publisher. Michael has a long established collaboration with artists in the Namatjira region through the Icha Nijara Art Center near Alice Springs. The Namatjira region is renowned for its generations of watercolor artists taught through the Hermannsburg School of Art, which Albert Namatjira founded in the 1930s. I visited this region myself as part of my quest to learn more about color and its relationship to both art and earth in Australia. This is where one of the sacred ochre pits is located. Ochre is used in ceremony, art, and medicine, and this is one of the only Aboriginal heritage sites open to visitors. It's still an active mine utilized by its traditional owners today. My understanding of the connection of color to land and culture was deepened throughout my time traveling, researching, and learning in Australia. I don't have time to summarize everything I learned in this presentation, but I can share a little bit of the art that I made in response to what I did learn. Using photographs I took throughout my time in Australia, I created collages which became impressions of color and landscape through a spinning mechanism. These works bring color alive in kinetic ways, just like it's experienced within nature. I recently used the collages themselves as printing plates for a series of viscosity colograph prints on handmade paper. I'm excited to have this series on view next week at the Brooklyn Art Print Fair. So if you're at Powerhouse Arts or New York, April 9th to 12th, please stop by and say hello. I'm also bringing a book called Over and Over, an artist book that I'm currently finishing. This book is a collaboration with Owen Bullock, a writer who heads the creative writing program at University of Canberra. We began a couple of collaborative artist book projects while I was there in 2024, which now in 2026 are coming to fruition. Lastly, I want to share my residency at Megalo Print Studio with you. Megalo Print Studio is a long-standing open access print studio located in Canberra, Australia. Megalo maintains a robust program of exhibitions, workshops, and artist residencies, including a generously funded international printmaking artist residency opportunity that everyone in our community should apply to. Oops. I think that's my timer. I'll make it very fast. Originally an international screen print collective, Megalo was established in 1980 by Alison Adler and her contemporaries. She's pictured here alongside a screen print installation she created at the National Portrait Gallery in Australia in 2023. And I'll just quickly go through some slides of the studio. You can definitely see the screen printing roots. This is probably the largest screen printing art residency room I have ever seen. The studio is very well equipped, and here's some of the work that I created there. The series is called TAFOS. It's an acronym for a line in a song, which is the air was full of sounds. And this is kind of how I felt about my experience in Australia, that even the air itself had things to teach me. And lastly, these are just some of the people I met who are amazing artists and professors and Fulbright folks, writers, etc. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. Next up is Jasmine, I believe, and just give me 1 second. We're going to switch sharing to my screen.
I was under the impression that maybe I was pushed to be later.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
But
You're
I
right.
can,
Kate
I
Copeland
can
is
go
next.
if you want me to go. Okay.
Nope. Kate is next. You're
Okay.
absolutely right.
Cool.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to jump right in and just say that I'm a letterpress person and alternative photo aficionado, who of course loves everything printerly, but those are my specialties. And I'm super excited to talk about Fulbright because I've done a couple and I'm also just finishing a term as a Fulbright Scholar Alumni Ambassador. What that essentially means is that I've had 2 years to go around the country and talk about my excitement with Fulbright. So great to be here with you. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this gives you a quick visual on where I've been on my Fulbright and other adventures. Right now, I'm off to the left in Portland, Oregon, teaching at Pacific Northwest College of Art, which is part of Willamette University. But I wanted to point out on the very top here, you can see that I did my BA at Macalester College, and I fell in love with printmaking because of Ruthann on screen here coming next. She's the whole reason I'm here today, the whole reason I have the career I have, and my love of printmaking dates back to her inspiration. Next slide, please. So I think before we talk too much about me, I need to say a few things about Fulbright. I know everybody that's been on one obviously knows this intuitively and inherently, but for those on the call that are just learning about Fulbright, Fulbright is a federal grant offered by the US government in partnership with 160 plus countries around the world, and it has a really beautiful goal that I really, really believe in. You can see it all written here, but the gist, of course, is that when you get people talking to people, they can make peaceful relationships and more harmony in the world. Next slide, please. There is a Fulbright for everybody. There's so many categories. It's pretty hard to navigate at first, but when you learn more about it, it can be very comprehensible. Suffice to say, students who are just about to graduate and even students who have graduated recently can get one. Academics of all levels and institutions can apply for their own. We can get nerdy about it later in the Q&A, but I just wanted to put out that there's so many different categories and so many opportunities. Next slide. So before I jump into talking about my first Fulbright, which was to India in 2013, wanted to just frame all of this that my two Fulbright experiences were super different. One is this story of everything going according to plan. You know, I had it on lockdown or, I had it locked in and it worked out just as I envisioned. And then the other one where everything was very different than what I expected, but possibly more beautiful because of it. And in both of the two Fulbright experiences, one of the things that was so interesting for me to grapple with was this position as an insider outsider. At home here in the US, I love queering the norm. I love creative transgression. I love, being part of the creative avant-garde, but then being in another culture and country, working to navigate dissent and respect at the same time. It was fascinating and really a core part of my own experiences. Next slide, please. So as you saw there, I went in 2013 when I was baby Kate to India, to the state of Gujarat in India to do this grant that I thought sounded really amazing. The gist of it was do letterpress, teach some stuff, be embedded at MSU Baroda, renowned for its printmaking. And next slide. When I first got to the campus, everything felt wonderful until I saw this. And I was pretty surprised to realize that their whole letterpress facility was no more. And that's when everything started pivoting in the most magical of ways, despite my surprise at seeing a non-functional press, a press that was functional, now made to be this sculptural object. If you go to the next slide, You can see that I met amazing colleagues who welcomed me with open arms. They actually didn't know that I was arriving because my contact at the university had been a distant administrator who just forgot to inform the printmaking department that anybody was coming to hang out with them for a while. But they were nonetheless so hospitable. They shared information about what they do in the department, and I felt so intimidated at first being in the presence of such litho, intaglio, relief, and other excellence. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that I had total amazement at their litho facilities. Litho stones were everywhere. They were like lining the hallways, lining the bathrooms. They were made into furniture everywhere. As I started to pivot and I chit-chatted with my friends, I knew I'm not a litho person. I'm not going to do any of that. But what am I going to do if not letterpress? Oh no. And next slide. After chit-chatting with those amazing colleagues, we quickly realized that I had a skill and a non-printmaking specific skill that they needed, which was photography. But their photo department was pretty defunct. It had been locked up for like 10 or 15 years, filled with cobwebs, kind of like a Halloween house. But my students and I quickly got together renovating the facility, doing our DIY wiring and filtration systems and whatnot. Next slide. And I offered a whole bunch of workshops that were heavily attended by, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 students at any given time. Next slide. And these students were so amazing. They were not taking the workshop for a grade, they were simply taking it for further education. I taught them how to do cyanotype, Van Dyke, salt printing, silver gelatin printing, film development, and so much more. And it was a really, really amazing experience to watch their experimentation. Being in a different context materiality wise, I saw some really fun experimentation, like you can see in the bottom middle with cyanotype on stone. It was incredible. Next slide. We did a lot of displays. We got Gujarat famous and got in the newspaper there. Next slide. And my students' love of cyanotype really infected me with a love of cyanotype that you'll see in my work to this day. This is one of the many pieces that came out of that time period for me. Some of it was just materiality and love of medium. Some of it was my attempt to navigate the sights and sounds around me. It was so challenging as a visual artist, interpreting the world through making, to figure out how to do that in a way that did not result in cultural appropriation. And this book was the result, a site plan for a missing language. I was investigating fissures and frictions in language, geography, architecture, and communication. And a lot of other really interesting for me explorations came out of that time. Next slide. And those lithostones that I showed you earlier, which I took such delight in standing on, it was this forbidden situation. Next slide. Those were a real treasure. And I think we've all been in those studios where, like, there's the one lithostone that has the example of the Victorian advertisement, and you show it when somebody doesn't understand what litho is or whatever. Um, at, at this school, they had hundreds and hundreds of lithostones with historic advertisements made in a Gujarati vernacular advertising style. It was just incredible, a real historical treasure trove. So as you go to the next slide, you can see that my students and colleagues and I, through conversation, mutuality and co-design, if you will, we decided, okay, well, let's save some of them by reprinting them. And it was such a process. I'm deeply not a litho person. And these stones had been kicking around in really extreme weather conditions for like 50 or 60 years. But we were able to reopen many of them, print the imagery, edition the imagery, and then in the next slide, you can see some of the results. There's way more than this. But we ended up with a little archive that I've shown once in the US, and I'm hoping at some point I can find some sort of way of placing it in a way where researchers who are interested in Indian graphic design can use it in the future. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of happy students and happy Kate and happy colleagues. My amazing colleague Satyanand off to the left on my second to last day in Gujarat. Next slide. Was happy to tour India a little bit, going to a few sites of historic importance. Next slide. And then back to the US, and 10 years passed. And in those 10 years, I had a baby, I got a bunch of promotions, and my academic, like professor career took off in the sense that I sort of fell into some roles of increasing responsibility at PNCA. I became dean, chief academic officer, uh, interim president for a minute when we needed it, and then helped my college go through this historic transition, a merger into the larger Willamette University, which helped our smaller art college stay afloat. We were very grateful for that, and I was very grateful for all those experiences. But in 2021, I knew, oh boy, it's time to get away. Gotta run out of Portland again. So I proposed a grant that had three parts to Royal Academy of Arts Antwerp, an industry museum in Ghent, where I researched art school mergers because Royal Academy had done many and I wanted to learn. I taught because I love it and it's just a part of life that really nourishes me. And of course, I made my own artwork. After so much administrative time, it was really time to get back to the studio in a focused way. So next slide, please. So in this post-COVID time, I went with my whole family, my wife, my kid, who was almost 6 years old at the time. We went and, figured out how how to transition from being locked in a home to being in another country. Next slide. And my feeling of like acceptance and love when I walked through the doors of the academy was very similar to that feeling I had back walking through the gates of Baroda, walking through my own institution. Next slide. The Royal Academy of Art Antwerp, as you can see here, is filled with just tons of amazing equipment and amazing human beings who have so many forms of technical expertise, just like in Baroda, just like in my home institution. Next slide, please. The settling in process was certainly a lot easier in Belgium than in India because everything was like I had read about on the internet and like I had prepared for. You can see us hanging some displays, doing some workshops, standing on presses, the whole 9 yards. Next slide. Of course, because this time it went according to plan, I did some workshops, cyanotype with some natural botanicals that we foraged from local materials, did a lot of toning, just stuff that would be an enhancement to a printmaking department without getting on anybody's toes. Next slide. End of semester, happy printmakers. This is the graduating class of bachelor's and master's students along with their faculty. Next slide, please. And like I said, I did a lot of my own creative work there, and it was centered in the medieval city of Ghent, the city seen on the left, and my favorite place in it, Industry Museum, seen on the right. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that Industry Museum is amazing. If you are into letterpress, you have to go. Next slide, please. They've got tons and tons, literally speaking, of letterpress equipment from all eras. So for me, it was like being a kid in a candy shop. If it moved and it wasn't broken, I was able to use it. I got really unprecedented access to both the stuff and so much support from the volunteers. Next slide, please. Armina in the middle is the lone printmaking staff person there. She was integral to my experience, as were the volunteers like the folks that you see in this slide on the left and in the next slide who helped me with Heidelberg press use. Certainly not a thing that I can do here in the US. Next slide. And this resulted in several bodies of work. I'm only going to show one slide because I don't really focus, I don't want to focus on my artistic output so much as the experience, but the experiences that I had fed me creatively into a few different creative directions, and I'm actually still going back to some of the source material from that residency at Industry Museum. Next slide. Of course, I gave some artist talks, and on the next slide, you can see that one of the benefits of being in Belgium on a Fulbright is that it was a very cohort-based experience, which was quite unlike my experience in India. They got all the Fulbrighters together for these field trips. So we had like a waffle tasting. We got to go to the embassy and goof around and take silly pictures. Definitely a real enhancement to my Belgian experience. Next slide. So on my second to last slide here, just want to pause to point out that there's so many impacts that I've experienced that I think are really important for those of you considering your own Fulbrights. The professional ones were great, but it's probably not why I would recommend anybody else doing a Fulbright. Yes, it's prestigious. Yes, it helps advance your career, but I think the personal ones are the really, really important ones. when you do a Fulbright, you make lasting friendships and you can better understand the world around you through the divergent and comparative experiences that you have abroad. I talked earlier about, that lifelong question of mine, how do you navigate dissent and respect at the same time? The experiences I've had in two different art institutions where I was relatively embedded for a very long amount of time, it helped me understand that everybody has something to teach, everybody has something to learn. There's no one right way to do anything, be it larger pedagogy or be it a specific process. And I gotta say, I wouldn't have thought I'd say this, but being abroad helped me develop a new appreciation for being here in the United States. We do a lot of stuff right in United States pedagogy, art pedagogy. I think there's a lot to be learned on all sides. And in the future, I have so much left to do, so many things undone, and I hope all of you listening today have some things ahead of you. As you apply for Fulbright, just make sure that you ask for help from all of us. And as you go to the final slide here, I want to show you my favorite picture of all, a picture that I would have not thought possible about 20 years ago when I was oh gosh, more than 20 years ago, many, many years back, when I was a student at Macalester College. Here's Ruthann and my 6-year-old child together in Antwerp on my Fulbright. The Ruthann has been a lifelong mentor and a friend now, and like the magic of Fulbright brought us together in this moment, and the magic of Fulbright is definitely there for all of you. So good luck in your applications, and I think we're on to Ruthann.
Hello, I'm Ruthann Godollei. Thank you, Kate, for the shout outs. It was so touching. I teach here at Macalester College in St. Paul, which is on Anishinaabe, Oseti Sakowin, and Wapakudi land, which is also currently under occupation by the federal government. And just so people know, that's ongoing. It's reduced in some ways, less visible, but it's a thing. I had a 2019 Fulbright Canada Research Chair in printmaking at the University of Edmonton in Alberta, Canada. Sean Caulfield is a professor there. Also Tanya Harnett, Gavin Renwick, Marilyn Oliver, and distinguished emeriti professors such as Walter Jewell and Liz Ingram. So I got to meet these people, work with them, see shows by them, be in shows with them. They were generous, and I can't thank them enough. A generous community that you enter as part of Fulbright can make a huge difference. I want to talk a little bit about the work I did there and also ongoing ways this Fulbright has gotten legs, right, for me, the experience. Next slide. I use text in my work a lot. I enjoy words, but also letter forms and their expressive properties, especially apply to social issues I think need attending to. So in Canada, like in the US, there's these reuse centers called the Restore, and it's like salvage stuff. So one time there was dozens of these door knockers for sale extremely cheap, and I got them all. And my engraving skills are sort of limited. I could do basic letter forms, but for assistance, I went to a trophy engraving place that engraved hockey trophies in Canada, right? And had them inscribe these with themes and words attending to access, privilege, class, power. This is spurred on by noting the differences between the expense in the US educational college system and the Canadian system. To this day, it costs about 7,000 Canadian dollars a year for average undergrad. And in the US, even with public institutions, about 38,000 US dollars. So there was these extreme disparities. And at the time, there was the scandal of people getting their kids into elite institutions by saying they were on the crew team when they weren't, and all those things. So these door knockers were like a way to talk about access. The piece in general was called Entree, which is your ability to join or not, and all the things preventing that, right? So next slide. there was, in this situation, Albion 1847 British-made letterpress sitting in the hallway of the art school at the University of Edmonton, and it hadn't been working as long as anybody had known. But at least it was out of the weather, unlike Kate's situation. So I took it on myself to start restoring it. I got help from 2 grad students you see on the left. That's Luke Johnson and Mike and McDowell. And we cleaned it up. The techs there helped me manufacture a handle. It wasn't missing much, but there were like cigarettes butts put out in the gears, and it was just needed a lot of attention. So we got it up and running and restored. And the first thing we devised between ourselves to make was the Polite Excuses Letterpress Scroll project. So we solicited words from passersby in the building on themes of social avoidance of the uncomfortable, which is something that I thought Minnesotans and Canadians shared, this kind of reticence and reserve that's pernicious in some ways and not helpful. So the scroll was 100 feet long. The words people gave us were things like deny and demur and ghosting and gaslighting even. So it was very popular. You can see we went all the way down the hall, across the lobby, into the stairwell, and there was a lot of interest in both this antique machine that people had just been passing by, and then also it got people talking, and the words got people talking, which was part of the project, to have this social engagement, get over some of those ongoing inhibitions. Next slide. This is me on the giant 3.5-ton Linder litho press. I'm using the back of litho plates to make monoprints. It was an incredible joy. It's a beast of a machine that barely fits in the room, but it was really fun to take the giant boat cover off it and think of a use for it. It printed beautifully. Next slide. I used it to make these I saw all over town. There's brutal winters there, of course, right? It's North Canada, and there's, although not even the northernmost, and there are these feather flags used for advertising. You still see them. They're kind of bendy and they blow in the wind, and they would get destroyed in the winter, blizzards. And I thought their decay of the text was really beautiful and horrible at the same time. So I made a big series of these things. Next. So, in the wake of I'm going to say one more thing. The Canadian Fulbright, not every country does this, but the Canadian Fulbright comes with one paid trip as an opportunity outside the province you're based in. So, Alberta's kind of middle west of the country, and I asked to go to Halifax to visit at the request of Erica Walker, the NSCAD, the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, which is based in Halifax. So I couldn't have gone farther on my one free trip. I gave a talk there. Mark Beauvais helped me make a print, and I hope you all caught Erica Walker's wonderful SGCI talk last week. It was brilliant and beautiful. So just so you know, some of these opportunities come with additional things you can do. But this slide is about the Society of Northern Alberta Printmakers, which is known as SNAP, and it's a wonderful institution in Edmonton. There was a tragic mass shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand, the year I was on this Fulbright. And there was a call online for non-Muslims to express support to Muslim communities in situations like this. So I was scheduled to give a workshop at SNAP, and I used the demo to discuss thoughtful actions that non-Muslims might take to support their Muslim neighbors. Working as a group, we made our response in the form of a screen print set of monoprints. Next slide, please. We asked the question, what message do you want to send to your Muslim neighbors here? This is a slide of Al Rashid Mosque, which turns out is the oldest mosque in all of Canada. So imagine for a minute what it took to get that thing built. You know, what communities got pushed westward and westward and westward just to be able to lay down roots at last in the far, middle west of the country, right? And to have people under attack and these kinds of attacks going on to this day, I thought it was really important for us to send a message. And so did the group I was working with. So these types of messages were for our Muslim neighbors, you are us, we're sorry this happened to you, etc. So I called Al Rashid Mosque and I asked them if they would be interested in a donated one of these prints as a gesture of solidarity, a small bit of hope or comfort. And they were incredibly touched. They put it in their community room in a prominent place. They told me they thought no non-Muslims would even care about what was happening in their community. So we put the other mama prints up in the gallery at SNAP. And so it was this beautiful, chance to have some communities that weren't necessarily talking to each other, talk to each other through art. Next slide. After the Fulbright back in Minnesota, I was invited by SNAP to have a solo show there, but COVID struck, right? So what I did, I pivoted, I made a Canadian version of a pandemic project I did in Minnesota, which was called the Wish Machine. So this Minnesota Wish Machine was a free 24/7, open all the time, lit up at night, window exhibit at the Minnesota Center for Book Arts in Minneapolis. I asked members of the community, the public, for a wish. At a time where wishes are really shut down, people are, wishing that the pandemic would end, of course, right? But just the idea that maybe you could put something hopeful into somebody's mind, like what could you wish for if you could have a 1 or 2-word wish? So I letterpressed printed each of the wishes, one for them to keep and one to put into a scroll that I was making fill up the windows of the gallery. So the wishes appear to be coming out of this ringer washer that I gave giant Albrecht Dürer angel wings to, so it looks like it's spewing out of there. The installation grew and grew and grew over the month it was up. This is the Canadian version. So in this case, I had to ask people by wishes by email, but luckily the international postal services were still working. So I letterpress printed one copy of the wish for the wisher to keep, and then one copy went onto the scroll, and I mailed the scrolls to Canada. And the staff at SNAP, bless them, shout out to April Dean and her crew, put them up in the windows. Even though the gallery's closed, here's a chance for people to have some art and something that they helped create on display. Next slide, please. One really interesting consequence of that earlier project with the mosque was that the Al Rashid Youth Group contributed wishes to this project. And their wishes were completely different. They wished for a flying carpet and a free Palestine, right? In addition, these wishes in the Canadian version had a lot of calls for justice for First Nations peoples who, like the George Floyd incident in my home state of Minnesota, where police brutality leads to someone's, harm and death. The Canadian Mounties, who U.S. sort of tend to idealize, I think, actually have brutalized many members of the First Nations communities there. And so plenty of wishes were for justice for those families. So it was an honor and a privilege to work in a country other than my own, to dispel some preconceptions I had about it, and to be able to give everybody a print who worked on this project, right? Everybody got a free print. Everybody got some way to go see it. And I felt like it was really the giveaway of something printers can do, right? So the takeaway that I would like for any aspiring Fulbrighters is to try not to be extractive in your residency if you get one. Try to see what the community you're joining needs and wants, and how you might facilitate that through your art if possible. Don't just helicopter in. See if you could make yourself useful. That holds the potential to become a mutually supportive relationship that can end up lasting. I continue to exhibit in Canada to this day and look forward to future goodwill collaborations with Canadian artists such as Sean Caulfield and Erica Walker. We're trying to counter the current strained relations between our countries, much like that Canadian astronaut on the current moonshot, right? Participating in the culture other than your own can lead to some really marvelous things, and I can't recommend it enough. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmine. I want to start this presentation by saying thank you to the Southern Graphics Council International for inviting me to be here. I'm feeling very humbled and inspired by all of the talk so far, and to be speaking amongst so many amazing artists that I'm sure if I knew you personally, you would be a great source of inspiration and mentorship to me as a new baby beginner printmaker and artist. So I just want to express that and express gratitude to each of you for being here. So my name is Jasmine Linder. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon. I know, Kate, yes, we'll have to meet each other maybe. I studied at Colorado College where I minored in studio art or majored in studio art and minored in environmental science and Portuguese. And I actually applied to my Fulbright Award my senior year of college to study in Salvador, Brazil. You can go on to the next slide, I think, actually. I came up with the idea, leaflets in the face of the Anthropocene, printmaking, bookmaking, and art activism in Eastern Brazil. The center of my research was something called Cordel literature, which are essentially little chapbooks that you can find on the street of northeastern Brazil. And I was based in a beautiful city called Salvador, which is on the northeastern coastline of Brazil. You can go ahead and move to the next slide. So I went into the application process for my Fulbright, having already been to Brazil multiple times. I had the privilege of studying abroad my freshman year of college under my amazing professor, Dr. Naomi Wood, who's a feminist and gender studies critical researcher and does a lot of studying of queer art and artist movements throughout Latin America. I had a lot of inspiration studying under Dr. Naomi Wood and definitely would not have had the ability to apply to this Fulbright without her guidance. I studied Portuguese for 2 months my freshman year, and then later my junior year applied for a joint faculty-student research grant where I returned to Salvador and studied street art and art activism under the guidance of Naomi Wood, sort of a historically grounded look at contemporary artist movements happening in northeastern Brazil, which is a part of the world that has faced a lot of adversity and racism and complicated politics. So I had a really life-changing experience doing that and felt that it would be really, really wonderful to be able to continue interacting with this part of the world that I felt that I had made a really deep and beautiful connection with. Okay, you can go to the next slide. When I was formulating my idea of how I wanted to go about my application and thinking about the kind of art that I had seen in the couple visits that I had already taken to Brazil, these chapbooks that I had seen in the street came to mind, and I had actually purchased a couple of them when I was living in Brazil for the first time. And one of the books, the pieces of Cordel literature that I had here at home in Portland happened to be written by somebody named Antonio Barreto. And I just wrote him a little email when I was thinking about my project idea, and I said, I'm thinking about doing an arts-based research project. If I did propose this, would you be okay being one of my affiliates? And I had the most warm and kind response from him, and he ended up being a affiliate and a mentor, and he will be a lasting friend to me for my whole life. So it felt very serendipitous to have had that connection. And you can move on to the next slide, please. And my second affiliate, because when you apply for a Fulbright, at least the undergrad or the bachelor's level Fulbright, I'm not sure about the Fulbright Scholars program, but you can list up to 3 affiliates. And so I had 2. One was Antonio Bajeto. They also want one affiliate to be an institution. And in Salvador, there's one big university art school. It's called University, or UFBA is the Universidade Federal da Bahia, and then the Escola de Belas Artes is the art school, which is basically translates to fine art school. I, through a lot of bureaucracy and really convoluted emails, actually finally secured an affiliation with that university, which meant that if I was awarded the Fulbright grant, I could become enrolled as what's called a special student. I was enrolled in postgraduate level art theory classes, which through this channel of bureaucracy also granted me access to the printmaking studio at the Arts University. So I was both taking these upper level art theory classes, which were in Portuguese and very intense, and really challenged me, while I was after school going to the print studio and making a lot of community and learning about contemporary printmaking that was happening. I want to tie this back to the context also of Cordell literature, right? Because Cordell literature is something that happens independently. People make these in their homes, but historically they were done with woodblock and letterpress printmaking. So a big part of my project, which I don't think I really explained sufficiently in the beginning, is that I was looking at these elements of Brazilian sort of popular art, folkloric art. I was looking at the historical context of those and how those practices have changed over time. I was doing that through these connections like Antonio Bajeto, people who write Cordell literature have devoted their life to this while studying printmaking, and seeing how these practices that used to be one and one have sort of diverged over time. So I was sort of doing this theoretical learning while developing my own artistic practice in the print studio. And you can go on to the next slide. A unplanned affiliation that I also made throughout my time in Brazil was through the Modern Art Museum. There was a woodcut printmaking workshop that happened weekly, and I was lucky to have been allowed to join that workshop and made a lot of community with people that were excited to learn about woodcut printmaking for the first time. Going into this grant, I had studied printmaking a little bit in school through my art major, but I was not, I would say, like super experienced, especially in woodcut printmaking. So it felt exciting to surround myself with people who were passionate and interested about woodcut printmaking for the same reason that I was. And we shared ideas about historical context and the ways that this practice has changed over time. You can go on to the next slide. This is just an example of one of the things that I was working on, experimenting with through that workshop, which was a folding zine. It's a zine format book, all made of print, relief prints that then you could fold into a zine type thing. So it's an example of how I was putting together these historic, long-standing practices with my own kind of take and contemporary work, which I did end up showing at the end of that class through a little exhibition that we had. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. And another really valuable part of this process and my time in Brazil was the chance to go up to a neighboring state called Pernambuco, because I was in a state called Bahia. And Pernambuco is really where a lot of this practice of woodcut printmaking and Cordell literature stems from. Cordell literature, it's understood to have originated in the countryside, and it's basically a woodcut print on the cover, and then typically poetry on the inside, and a lot of the time it's written phonetically, so more of an accessible way for people to read and understand if maybe they don't know grammar rules and or how to read like non phonetically. So I had the chance to go to the countryside and meet one of the members of this artist named Jota Borges, who's a super long-standing beloved woodcut printmaker. And by going physically to this place, I think I could have a energetic and sort of somatic understanding of the power and importance of this folkloric historic printmaking technique. It was very special. Okay, next slide, please. And then just some of the independent printmaking experiments and projects that I worked on while I was doing all this learning included these kind of funky fish prints that I made. I had the idea of interlocking, trying to make a intaglio or copperplate print that connected to itself, like so I could make it really expansive. Other folks had mentioned how plans change, and I had gone through a lot of pretty emotionally heavy things when I was abroad, and processing of things that happened to people here in the US when I was away, and I found a lot of comfort in the fish that I lived right next to the ocean, and there were a ton of fish in the water, and I found this really deep sense of comfort and connection with them. So I sort of wanted to make a tribute print to them, but I guess that also just is an example of how I never would have thought that I would have made a necessarily it feels a little bit random, but in the time it felt very meaningful to me when I needed to do that. Okay, the next slide, please. And also I did a little bit of help making covers for some of Antonio Bajeto's Cordace. Cordace is the plural for Cordell or Cordell literature. And I still do that sometimes for him from here. I make digital covers. And we had a little release party of this book, which often involves the poetry on the inside being read aloud with some percussion accompaniment. And it felt like a really beautiful full circle moment, because this bookstore where we were releasing this Cordell was actually where I bought his Cordell literature piece that ended up leading to this whole Fulbright. Those moments in life are so beautiful when you never would have known the first time that you visit or engage with something, how it might come back in a full circle moment later in life. Okay, next slide, please. Other example of little things that I was doing on my own was developing an at-home paper making process via only organic materials, which then I would experiment with printmaking on. And you can move on to the next slide. And then I also did some kind of funky sculptural paper, and these fibers that I was using, sugarcane and okra, they're both very tied in terms of meaning to the history of Brazil and the colonization and a lot of violence that happened. And so through these pieces, I was experimenting with idea of memory and fragility, and also just having fun trying to make paper from limited resources in my little apartment that I had. But okay, and next slide. Yeah, so when I was in Brazil, I sort of had a lot of small independent projects while I was making connections and learning in these institutions and larger places. And of course, a lot of these experiments has carried with me. I now am working at a local print shop called Atelier Meridian here in Portland, where I am working as an independent artist. And I think that without the experience that I had in Brazil, learning at a print studio and just really becoming very passionate about the power of printmaking, I would not have the confidence that I have now to be making prints. These are monotype watercolor Nakua ink monotype prints. And the next slide, please. Yeah, I just want to extend so much gratitude for my mentors that have given me so much love and patience and inspiration, and really truly became my family throughout this process. The photo on the right is my mentor Antonio Bajeto, and then to the right of me is Evandro Savini, who is the leading printmaker at the Escola de Belas Artes in Bahia, and then of course my my Portuguese professor Naomi Wood, who opened this whole beautiful world of art activism in northeastern Brazil to me. Yeah, and gratitude to all of you again. Thank you for hearing what I had to say, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations.
Hi everyone. I'm Cayla Skillin-Brauchle. I am also in Oregon. There's a lot of us in Oregon here tonight, which is fun. And I'm actually going to talk about a Fulbright I did in 2013, and I did the Fulbright at the end of my MFA program. So I got my MFA in printmaking from Ohio University, and my last year of grad school, I wrote a student grant, so similar to Jasmine. But I was married when I went on my Fulbright. I didn't go right to grad school, so I sort of did it as not someone right out of undergrad. And in my Fulbright program in India, where I was, there were a lot of people who did that similar thing. So for people who might be in the room, who are thinking about post MFA, it's a really good option as a student researcher as well. Another thing, so I had gone to India as an undergraduate. I had done about 6 months, and I had lived with a family in Maharashtra during that time, and I'd learned to speak Marathi. I had a 3-year-old little brother who really expedited my language process, and I was pretty good at Marathi at that point. And so when I went to apply for a Fulbright, I also applied for a Critical Language Enhancement Award, and there are some countries in the world which have these. And so my Marathi was at a level that I was awarded a 3-month Critical Language Enhancement Award, which I did at the American Institute of Indian Studies in Pune, India, which is where I lived previously. So I ended up having a 12-month grant. So we can go to the next slide. So I am going to echo Kate in that a Fulbright in India, especially 10 years ago, was wild in a lot of ways, in that your expectations of what was going to happen and what happened did not meet. I made this print at one point that it's backwards here, but it says everything is possible. Nothing is possible until it is, which was my mantra for my time in India. And at this point, I've spent many years in India. And at that point, I had spent a fair amount of time as well. But I wrote a grant about value-added ownership. I wrote a grant about people decorating their trucks. Like you'll see right here, this truck on the left, this is me riding in someone's truck. And this is the grant that I wrote. And you can go to the next slide, Blake. And there's one other slide in between there, I think. No, maybe not. Okay, it's fine. I did talk to a lot, and I have done lots of things with that project, but I'm actually going to talk about 2 other projects today, because it turns out when you're in India for a year, and I did tons of research, I spent lots of time at truck yards. It was amazing. I had so much fun talking with people, taking photographs, but I had 2 affiliates there, and one of them was this place called the School JJ School of Art, and they didn't know I was coming either, Kate. Even though I had an affiliate letter, I got there and I was a total surprise. They were really kind of shocked I was there, and I was coming as a student, and they didn't really know what to do with me. But they started inviting me to do things. So go ahead to the next slide. So Mumbai, this is a picture I took in 2013, and Mumbai has a population of about 23 million, but it was about 20 million at that time. And it is about 1.1 square feet of land per person. New York City is about 27 square feet per person. So it is a really densely populated place. So I made these 2 projects, which were both a performance and then an artist book. And those are what I'm going to talk about today, because they really kind of exhibit the network that one can make when you end up somewhere with a lot of planning and not a lot of people expecting you on the other side. So the first thing was that I got there and my hosts were so gracious at the Sir JJ School of Art, even though they didn't expect me to be there. And they invited me to do various things. One of the things they invited me to do was to take part in this exhibition. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. My practice is my MFA is in printmaking. My practice is oftentimes in social practice. And I was, at this point, I had been in India for about 4 months. I'd spent about 3.5 months of that doing intensive Marathi study in the city of Pune, which is about 3 hours inland from Mumbai, and a city that I had spent at that point at least a year in previously. So I have a very strong network. And I visited Mumbai many times, but at this point, had been there for about 6 weeks. And Mumbai is this huge city, and there is lots of paperwork, lots of bureaucracy, and it was something I was really interested in about being there. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And so I set up a performance event in which I decided that I would certify any version of the truth that was brought to me in any language as sort of an exercise in sort of co-authoring and co-trust, right? And it ended up being one of the most delightful experiences, really, of my career so far, because people had a lot to say and loved this idea of both the idea that I would certify something for them in a place where things are often certified, but also that they had control over what I certified, right? So we had this moment of sort of play and vulnerability that came together. Go ahead till the next slide. You can see here, I worked with a tailor. I spent lots of time at the Xerox booth photocopying things. I got lots of official stamps made, and did lots of like fun printmakerly things that didn't require presses to get sort of in this place in which I could duplicate things. Go ahead and go to the next slide. You can see here that the idea of a line was sort of non-existent. And so I set up this line on the first day. It was so quaint of me. And then people literally took down the things that I had done and just rushed the table. It was awesome. And folks were really debating with each other about their versions of the truth. So it ended up being my presence there was pretty small. People were definitely interested that I was a foreigner who spoke this regional language, but also Mumbai is a very cosmopolitan city, and there are, at last count, like 64 major languages spoken in India right now. So it was, while it is one of a major language in the state of Maharashtra where Mumbai is, lots of people did not speak necessarily Marathi or English. So there were lots of conversations happening in different languages. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. As we were doing this, I would keep the duplicate and give the person whose truth it was the original, right? It was never my truth. It was always theirs. And so that was sort of a gesture to that. All of the information is in Marathi and in English. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And these are some copies of the certificates of the truth. So you can see here that some people were writing in English. This other one is in Marathi, but I also got them in Hindi and Gujarati and Malayalam. I got them in a variety of different languages. Go ahead to the next slide. At this point, I realized that I had like 135 versions of the truth. I did it over 3 days. I planned to be there like 3 hours a day. Usually the line would keep me there like 8 hours a day. And so I felt like I had this great responsibility. I had this little glimpse of India of Mumbai and the psyche of Mumbai at that moment. So go ahead and move to the next slide. And I was really lucky at that point that I got approached by some people who became great friends. Clark House Initiative, Bombay, who's a curatorial project. They've been involved in biennials and lots of things since then. But at that point, we were all just like people in our 20s making artwork in Mumbai. And they approached me, and then some of the graduate students in printmaking, who are actually all incredible contemporary artists now. agreed to help me make a book of some of the versions of the truth. I also worked with a translator and transcriber who translated and just transcribed everything into English and Marathi so we could make a dual language book. Go ahead to the next slide. Here we are in the printmaking studio. You can see the counterweight that we have on the back of that screen print screen there, which was awesome. All of the inks were definitely not non-toxic, and I made people wear gloves, which they thought was very silly. But now I know a lot of their children, and I feel happy that I made them wear gloves. And there was I bought a lot of chai and vada pav to sort of get us through these sessions. These folks I still keep in touch with, and they're really amazing. The next slide. I worked with some stationers in their guillotines to help me cut down the books. Next slide. And this is the final version of the truth. So everything is the truth. It's a bilingual book that's actually a box. So it's a non-hierarchical design. So it can be read in English or Marathi or both at the same time, right? So you can flip it in either direction. There's no front or back. All of the truths are in 2 languages on both sides. Next slide. The greens were inspired by, we were making this book in July, which was like deep monsoon season in Mumbai, and it is like amazingly beautiful, vibrant. And so the greens were inspired by that. Next slide. And here are some versions of the truth. So India and Pakistan are 2 countries separated by an imaginary border. However, we are united in the hearts, minds, and thoughts of our people. For those who have their relatives in places of worship across the border, these countries were never apart and never will be. In India, women are traditionally seen as mothers, sisters, and daughters. However, reading daily reports of sexual molestations, assaults, and atrocities against women, I wonder whether women are really treated as mothers, sisters, and daughters in India. And a variety of other things. We ended up selecting 24 truths to go into the book. Next slide. I was able to do a launch party for the project at the Sir J.J. School of Art. It was raining at the time, so it was not in the same garden. It was right inside. And these are 2 of the students who offered their truths, and it's actually here they are with their published truths. So actually, the guy on the left is the one who wrote the statement about women in India. I was there, unfortunately, during some really horrific rape cases on Delhi public transportation. And so that was a theme that was happening at that time that needed to be talked about. All right, next slide. So some other things, I gave a artist lecture in Marathi, which is probably one of the scariest things I've ever done. I got the students were very appreciative. That was awesome. And really ended up meeting a lot of other young artists who we've had kind of parallel careers. We've been in shows together. And there I am on the left, having just gone to the biennial. I was there for the first biennial in Kochi in 2013, which was really amazing. And there on the right is my daughter, Nico, at the Sir J.J. School of Art about 1.5 years ago, last time we visited. And she got to visit a lot of the artists that are in this talk and hang out with their kids. It was pretty cool. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening. And I think my biggest takeaway was that it was it was a real way to sort of like navigate being an artist in unexpected territories, and making so many sort of beautiful friendships from that. And, just seeing the ingenuity of artists across the world. We have so much in common in the way that we kind of work and move through things. So, yeah, it was a delight.
So I see you pulled one of my pictures after
I
my
did.
fresh haircut right off my site because I didn't provide any.
Yep.
So it has been, I love hearing everyone's presentations. And I am not showing slides for two reasons. The first one was I really wanted to talk to people who are, aspiring to apply for Fulbright and to become a Fulbright. The other is I'm in the middle of traveling and none of my images are on the cloud. And so I actually don't have access to them. I haven't been home since last November. So I was a Fulbright scholar to Taiwan, and it was like an absolutely amazing experience. Um, However, it was definitely different than what I think of as a traditional Fulbright. So the whole process started. I was working in New York at the Bob Blackburn printmaking workshop when I met Chen Ping Don. And he was a professor in Taipei, actually just north of Taipei, in Guangzhou, which the school has changed names many times. I believe it's now called the Taipei Fine Art University. That's one thing with Taipei, I'd say Taiwan in general, the names of things change every couple of years. So something can go from a college to a university to a museum, like it changes radically. So anyhow, when I met Don, we became very good friends. And when I wanted to apply, I knew I wanted to go to Taiwan. So this is the first question that I have for people that are thinking about doing a Fulbright. Why do how are you choosing your country to go to? And can you give a reason that the project you're doing can only be done in that country? So that is a really big deal because it needs to go through both the U.S. State Department and that country. So it should be something that could only be done there. So I knew I originally was thinking about going to China, and just to make this brief, I decided on Taiwan because the majority of prints and artwork that I wanted to see had been brought over during the Cultural Revolution, basically saved from destruction, and were in the Taipei Fine Art Museum. And that was part of my rationale also for going to Taipei. So I had my direct connection to Dawn, who wrote me my letter of recommendation. And the professors in Taiwan have huge, huge power, more than museum curators, gallerists. Like what I learned there was they really call the shots for everything. And if you're connected to them that way, it's, you're then sort of a part of that as well. So I applied. I went as a artist scholar. I was a professor at the time, but I did not apply through a university or to a university. So I would be an independent person in the country. And I think that's where it's very different from a lot of the other ones where people are connected to universities. So I would be absolutely solo. Dawn, who was, a professor at the university in Guangzhou, was living in the States, and he was not planning on going back. He was planning on, staying in New York. So just before I left, I had a big party, and I was going to be gone for a year. And somebody gave me a gift that they wanted me to deliver to a person in Taipei who was a theater production manager. There was one thing that I knew would happen when I got to Taipei, and that was I had 6 days to find a place to live, that the Fulbright would put me up for 6 days in a hotel. So I got to Taipei. I had this gift, and I actually think I called them on the phone. Maybe I emailed them. I don't really remember, but called this person on the phone. Because sure enough, when I got there, Fulbright said, you need to go get a bank account and a place to live. I'm like, okay. that was it. No support beyond that. So there was one other person that was there who was a mathematician who was going to be going, quite a bit further south. So here's another thing you want to think about is, your independence in another country, also being really comfortable, being really flexible, and consider the communities that you are a part of now as well. Because the person that gave me the gift to give to this other person, we're both queer, I'm queer, and so we met up, and the first thing she said was, do you have a cell phone? Do you have a place to live? Do you have any friends? And at the time, I needed a new SIM card. So I didn't have an iPhone. So I'm like, I need a cell phone. I need a place to live. I don't have any friends. So she's like, my brother has a cell phone shop. I'm going to, send you there. Here's the address. I'm leaving for China for a few months. I'm going to there's going to be a big party this weekend at this queer club, and you'll make a whole bunch of friends. Just show up at this time. So basically, this one person was, got together like 50 people. And that very first weekend, I went and made loads of friends that I had for my entire time while I was in Taiwan, and they have since, come to the States to visit me. The support from the Fulbright office truly was absolutely zero. I went to another university to look through their ads to find housing, and I couldn't. So I had studied Chinese for 2 years, but I couldn't read it. And so I was given, the university was used to international students. So I was given, basically a piece of paper that had all the characters on it. So I could say, this is the size of the room. Does it have cooking? Does it have water? That type of thing. So I narrowed a bunch of places down, and I'm like, I really need help calling people on the phone, which the Fulbright office is like, yeah, no, we don't do that. So I held on to this until that party at the bar on the weekend and asked people if they could, help me make these phone calls to find a place to live. And they did. And and this is not to put down Fulbright in any way. Why I'm telling you this is if you're going to do a Fulbright, don't go into it with expectations that they are going to be there to help you out, I guess, or necessarily be there to facilitate invitations. So yeah, I found an apartment by the first week. I worked out of my apartment. And I also, I traveled to the university where my friend was a professor who was away. So I met people there. I did everything really independent though. It's like I did not have a print shop to work in. I worked out of my apartment. I eventually met some curators, and there was a brand new contemporary art museum. And so I was working there. I was volunteering there. I went everywhere I could to, talk to people. The museum wanted someone to do voiceovers for their tour. So I did the English voiceovers for their tour. They needed help with their catalog and catalog layout. So I got really involved with the museum by doing work there. And really that very first weekend, the group of people that I met, I had like 10 core friends, so none of which were in the arts. So a lot of our activities were hiking, going to temples, going to the beach, going scuba diving. So I will really say a lot of my Fulbright was, extremely social, which was also wildly valuable. Like it was really amazingly valuable, to be able to do that and to just go to a place and live. At the time, the award, the financial award I got for the Fulbright was more than my full-time teaching position. So I was already, a full professor, and this was more money. So it was also really nice to, spend a year in another country and, not have it be struggling whatsoever. They made it really easy. Um, so, the biggest takeaway about this is, I highly recommend doing a Fulbright. Like just being able to go to another country, to work on projects, to really think about, do you want to be affiliated with the university, or do you want to do solo creative research? Do you need to be connected with someone? But absolutely, you have to, as far as I'm concerned, someone may say this is not true, but you have to have letters of recommendations from someone in that country of where you want to go. And I know sometimes people get nervous about language and things like that. And I would say absolutely, don't do that, because don't worry about it. No matter where you go, like it's always really fun, and you'll figure things out. So I would love to help out anyone who's like interested in applying for Fulbright. I just wanted to give you like just an overview of my like slightly unusual approach to getting there, and you know, really using the support network that I knew, because I did not have, the same kind of connections, or the office made it very clear they didn't want to see anyone or have them coming there. So okay, so that's it. That's all I have for you.
Hello. Thanks to everybody for being here. It'll be kind of interesting because I also did a Fulbright in Taiwan. So it's kind of fun to hear your side of it, Hilary. My name is Katie Baldwin, and I am a professor at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, where I teach book arts and printmaking. And next slide. And I'm going to talk about my project, Modified Landscape, which is a series of woodblock prints. Next slide. My main research interests in printmaking are mokuhanga, which is a traditional water-based woodblock technique, and letterpress. My Fulbright was, oh, that's okay, you can go forward. My Fulbright, so basically I began studying traditional Japanese woodblock printing in 2004 in Awaji Island in Japan. And I wanted to expand my creative research in woodblock printing, and decided to go to Taiwan. I was a Fulbright scholar in 2021 at the International Printmaking Center at National Taiwan Normal University. And just kind of like as an interesting contrast, I specifically had a connection with Lao Shuping, who was able to write my letter of recommendation, and that was my connection at the university. Next slide, please. So the experience of working as an artist in a new culture and learning a new language has a bunch of challenges, and that requires flexibility and patience. And during 2021, there were all these sort of additional challenges due to the pandemic. And so after I arrived in Taipei, the city shut down due to COVID. There was an outbreak, and I was no longer able to use the printmaking studio at the university. I was housed on the university, but I couldn't go into the shop. So I worked from my small apartment. Next slide, please. And then over the course of the year, I learned about the landscape of Taiwan. And I did this by riding my bike along nearly empty streets in very, very hot and humid weather. And I would visit wetlands, canals, and parks. Next slide, please. I walked through neighborhoods, discovering small gardens along sidewalks and in alleyways. Next slide. Inspired by my explorations of the land and the human capacity to shape the world, I created a series of woodblock images that were narrative. I transferred drawings to woodblocks, I carved the blocks, and then I printed them by hand using the traditional technique called mukuhanga. Meeting Place Fire Drill is the first print in the modified landscape series, and it alludes to an evacuation from a crisis. One night at the hotel I was staying at, the fire alarm went off and I evacuated the building. And I stood on the sidewalk in this foreign country in the middle of the night, wondering if this was an emergency or a drill. And this print is inspired by ink brush painting. I worked with limited color palette of black and gray, and I simplified the line work of this woodblock print while emphasizing shape. Next slide. Infringing on each other's personal space, the figures overlap. After all, they find themselves in this situation together. As a visitor of Taiwan, I tried to make sense of an unfamiliar world. Masking, contact tracing, views of fighter jets flying low over the city were a reminder of the global challenges affecting life. But I explored the city through the lens of everyday life, which began each morning with a jog in Da'an Park and a fresh pineapple from my neighborhood market. The park, located in the center of Da'an District, is a 26 hectares of land with an urban forest that doubles as an evacuation site in case of an emergency. So from early in the morning until late at night, people would gather to participate in endless activities. As regulations for public gatherings during the pandemic would shift and change in response to COVID cases, the gatherings at the park would also shift and change. The large groups disappeared and the park became a place where individuals kept their distance from each other. A person practiced their saxophone, another fed the birds, while someone sat on a bench. Alone amongst the forest trees, people practiced Tai Chi. Long shadows cast by the trees in the early morning sun are emphasized. Next slide, please. Before making this print, I worked with a brush and sumi ink on paper to sketch the image. Next slide. The carved wood blocks attempt to capture the characteristics of the brushwork from my drawing in the printed image. Next slide. The Chiang Kai-shek Memorial opened in 1980 and was designed for democratic public gatherings, as well as a place for exercise, singing, and playing chess. Originally the site of a military base, it covers 25 hectares and is surrounded by a white wall of corridors with a blue-tiled roof and lattice windows. I walked the path through the elaborate gardens of artificially landscaped hills, ponds, and carefully manicured non-native trees. Meeting Place is a woodblock print inspired by the Memorial Hall. I see this hall as a symbol for the complicated political situation in the country and its relationship with mainland China, but I experience it as a place treasured by a community of people for their everyday activities. Next slide. A wall with elaborate windows and traditional glazed roof tiles make up the prominent elements of the woodblock print. Rather than looking through the windows at the scenery borrowed from the landscape outside the garden, the viewer looks from the outside of the wall into the garden at three figures and birds. Working monochromatically with Berlin blue, I reference not only the blue of the roof tiles, but also associations with the color blue, such as solitude, calmness, and serenity. Next slide. The Palace Museum, located in Taipei City, holds an enormous permanent collection of Chinese artifacts. Much of the collection's complicated journey began in China, was relocated multiple times, and eventually moved to Taiwan. Metalwork, ceramics, carvings, paintings, calligraphy, and rare books in the permanent collection span the Neolithic to modern period of Chinese history. The museum grounds also includes the Zaijin Garden. I would watch the gardeners maintaining the manufactured landscape. The print clipped landscape shows two gardeners in the middle of their work. Next slide. As one trims hedges, the other gathers the clippings. Next slide. Shadows cast by the brushes indicate that it is midday, the sun is high in the sky, and it is hot and it's humid. Alongside the practice of methodical work in woodblock printing, I also worked with fabric. I spent hours wandering the Yongle Fabric Market, which is a multi-city building packed with fabric stalls. I began making quilt tops by posing a simple question: could I represent a sense of place specific to Taiwan in a patchwork of color? Next slide. With the first quilt, I began with a visit to the East Sea, where I gazed out at a seascape in motion, made up of blues and grays, reflecting water, rocking buoys and boats, and a changing sky. Back in my apartment, I worked with a limited selection of fabric scraps, piecing it together intuitively. As I worked, I would change my mind, take things apart, and rearrange squares. Once I was satisfied with how I had pieced the top together, I hand quilted the top, middle, and back layers. Next slide. After completing the quilt EC, I continued to create textile works responding to specific sites: my apartment balcony view of Taipei during a plum rain, a midnight walk through the city streets, and a bike ride through the wetlands. Since I have returned from Taiwan, I continue to make prints that are inspired by drawings that I made while I was there. In the ongoing series Modified Landscape, I continue to work with this limited color palette and really simple visual language and personal storytelling to explore a narrative about a particular time and place. And I've begun really combining a lot of the imagery from prints into printed fabric that then become parts of these larger quilts, which is a sort of new direction in this series. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thanks to Blake for helping to organize this. And I'm going to conclude this, and I'm so grateful for the presentations that preceded me by Laura and Kate and Ruthann and Jasmine and Cayla and Hilary and Katie. And there's lots of concepts that are addressed in theirs that are ones that I hope to touch upon a little bit. Next slide, if we can. I want to start by saying that I am a Fulbright kid. My father was an English professor at the University of Wisconsin, and I lived in Baghdad in 1964 and 65 when I was in first grade. And we're on the left driving out with someone's car from the State Department. We would go picnicking in the desert. And the next slide, in the early 70s, when I was in seventh and eighth grade, I went to an international school and lived in Tehran, Iran. And those of you who know my work that involves invented ancient cultures, this period of childhood definitely informed work that I did later as an artist. And I just say this because I know um, um, the idea of going abroad and bringing your children is sometimes something that you're concerned about doing. But I've had several colleagues here at the University of Tennessee who've gone abroad with Fulbright, and it's been a great experience for their families. And that was the same for me. Next slide. So my Fulbright was a while ago, and it's really interesting to see the beautiful photographs that many of you have. I was going through some of my archives for a presentation by Fulbrighters here at the university, talking about ways of pursuing them. And it really happened pretty accidentally. I had an independent study student who left Poland in the mid 1980s during the martial law period. He never finished his degree. His classmate later became the head of the printmaking program there. And we organized an exchange exhibit where we sent 50 prints from Tennessee to them as a gift. They sent 50 to us, and we showed it in Knoxville, and then we boxed it up and we shipped it all over the United States. And it went to various places from Carnegie Mellon University, University of Nebraska. It was like back then in the SGC newsletter, it was like if you can ship it to the next location, you can show it. So it traveled around the country. And as a result of that exchange, I was invited to show my work in Poznan in 2001. I went there. We built I exhibited my work, met them, and then I applied that fall for the Fulbright that followed. So I went there in 2002. I arrived exactly a year after 9/11, and it was a really interesting time. Um, and like the experience that Kate talked about, the the cohort that was part of the orientation. I'm sorry that Hilary had such a bad experience with the Fulbright office in Taiwan because it was the Fulbright program in Poland is long established. There were all sorts of people across a lot of disciplines. There were student Fulbrighters, which is great about this panel to hear from people who did it as students, as well as like Laura going to Australia as a senior Fulbrighter. My proposal was to go to the University of the Arts in Poznan. At the time, it was the Academy of Fine Arts to teach what was basically a mixed media printmaking course. In in Poznan, every media was sort of siloed, and there wasn't uh, um, mixed uses of them and so forth. Next slide. Um, and my hosts were Mirek Pawłowski, who was the friend of my student here in Knoxville, who ran the screen print studio area, and he was head of the graphics program. And their graphics included graphic design as well. Katie, I didn't see any letterpress in Poznan when I was there. And then the next slide, my other colleague, Krzysztof Molenda, was an associate professor in the relief print studio and also a graphic designer. So they set me up in one of the schools. It's like a dorm room setup. I basically had two of them linked by a balcony. And so that was my housing arrangement right on campus. And the next slide, the class I taught, these are not my students, these are my colleagues and so forth. But the class I taught was only on Fridays from 9 to noon. And out of a 15-week term, basically the European academic calendar runs from beginning of October into January. So it did overlap my spring term the following semester in Knoxville. And I was, so that was something I needed to juggle. At the time, and this has changed, Fulbright paid the institution. So they paid the University of Tennessee essentially for replacement teaching. I kept my salary, but there were also other funds. So, for example, I had $700 to buy equipment, supplies, and books. I bought books that I thought would be useful for their library, and they came by diplomatic pouch. So I was able to kind of come bearing offerings. Next slide. Of course, a lot of this has been noted before involves, creating relationships with folks. And I think a good way of thinking about it is as a Fulbrighter, you want to think of yourself as a kind of ambassador. You're there. They very much emphasize your role as a representative of the United States. And I think, who do we want to represent the United States? But artists and scholars and intellectuals and scientists and engineers. And I think that's one of the really important parts of Fulbright is an opportunity to build these creative and intellectual relationships. So, admittedly, it did involve drinking vodka fairly frequently. Next slide. They even had me play harmonica at a jazz and blues club. So, forms of cultural exchange can take many different forms. Next. And one thing that really made the Fulbright impactful from my perspective was my hosts organized a national student exhibit that was a biennial. And we accompanied that show as it traveled throughout Poland. And so there was an extensive network, sort of like printmakers in the United States, where you know colleagues at other institutions. The same way Ruthann went to NASCAD University at the invitation of Erica Walker. So next slide. Here is a map of Poland. So where the red circle is Poznan in Western Poland. It was basically halfway between Berlin and Warsaw. All of the two cities with green circles are places where I exhibited my work during the one semester I was there. I brought a portfolio of work and it was set up in galleries there. I sort of arranged that with my hosts in advance. And then everywhere circled there, I went to give a lecture. And this is before PowerPoint, folks. So I wrote to 50 colleagues around the United States. I said, send me 2 slides of your work. And that was my talk, Contemporary Printmaking in the United States. And it was 100 slides, and I was showing all sorts of different approaches to printmaking. And really, the experience I mean, I did this at the end of the year that I helped to organize with John Rousseau the 30th SGC conference that was in New Orleans. And so SGC was really important to my network to represent American printmaking in Poland. Next slide. So here is my show in the hallways at the Art Academy in Krakow. The Fulbright Commission would pay for you to go to 2 different lectures during the year when you were there. But the train service was so inexpensive, I just paid out of my own pocket and went to these different places. And they often had like a academy apartment or something to put you up in. And so my main talk, I went around, I gave a demo. I was promoting pronto plates. It was like the American coming in showing this plastic lithography, and they would want to know, like, do you need a special gum Arabic? And I would always say, Gumma ist Gumma. Gum is gum. And so we did laser printed plates, hand-drawn plates, and it was a way of adding a whole different kind of approach and method. I should have had the pronto plate people provide me with them, but I bought them with my supplies. So that became kind of a quick and direct way of kind of exchanging a different way of thinking about lithography. Next slide. One of the real important things that came out of this was the 2005 Impact International Printmaking Conference. I had organized 3 SGC conferences before then, and I have this kind of disease where I go to a city and I look at it and I think, well, this would be a really nice place for a conference. And I did that in Hangzhou once and I was like, oh no, I better not. But I helped to organize a conference that started in Berlin, went to Poznan, and ended up in Berlin. We had 280 people from 28 countries attend that conference. And this is the planning committee and the conference program. So I was bringing together people from Germany and Poland, and I applied for and got support for like small grants through the Goethe Institute, through the US embassies in both Berlin and Warsaw. Next slide. And so if you want, here's a QR code. I'll leave it up for a moment where you can go to the website, which still exists for this conference. It has excellent maps of Poznan and Berlin. I think it was a really important opportunity to kind of help connect people and bring a kind of SGC spirit to Poland because they had a lot of the built-in infrastructure with the art academies and these exchange exhibits, but they hadn't had a lot of history of conferences and those sort of things. And then also the challenge of getting the Berliners to come to Poland was also an interesting kind of bridge. So I felt really truly as a cultural ambassador. Next slide. And so these are some of the delegates on the steps of the National Museum in Poznan, where they organized great exhibits. We had an exhibit of works from the Krakow Triennale in Poland. We had a German artist, Thomas Kilper, who did a big mural piece that was on the Academy of the University of Arts in Poznan building, and a lot of great programming. Through the Trust for Mutual Understanding, I was able to bring a number of artists to Poland, including Hugh Merrill, Patricia Olinik, now at WashU, Ruth Weisberg from USC, a printmaker emerita recipient from SGCI, and Mark Pascal, curator from the Art Institute Chicago, as part of that conference. Next slide. So this is the version of the open portfolio like we have at SGC. in an interesting building, the Zamek building, which is a sort of castle building in Poznan. Next slide. So out of that, because the Fulbright paid the University of Tennessee, I retained my salary. It's now different. They'll pay people directly for it, and it varies in different ways. So talk to people with Fulbright. They can help you navigate that process. We developed I used some of those funds for 2 or 3 years after my Fulbright to fund two students from Poznan to come to Tennessee every September before their academic year started in exchange for two of our students, typically graduate students, going to Poland in May and June. And we've had this relationship now for over 20 years with the Fine Arts Academy in Wrocław, Poland. And so this is their newer building. They have a more historic building, but this is the building where their beautiful print studios are. Next slide. So here's from their website, the Eugenius Geppert Academy of Art and Design in Wrocław. So what's really interesting is in Europe is the Erasmus program that helps students in Europe spend a semester or year at another European institution in their course of study. And the Art Academy in Wrocław has a lot of English language courses. They also have a great post-baccalaureate program. So if you've completed a BA or BFA and you want to spend a year before maybe going to graduate school, or it's a kind of transition period, you can spend a year there. And I've spoken with their program there. So they're a great group of colleagues and a high level of English proficiency. And next slide. This shows a couple of the students this fall from Wrocław with an exhibit in our student gallery in September. And the slide after that shows a couple of our grad students last May with their exhibit in the print area of the academy there. So that's one of the things that I didn't really plan going into this, but looking for possibilities to create institutional linkages that would be sustainable and long-term. And so that's one of the great outcomes. So I'm continually connected to Poland through this exchange over 2 decades later. And thanks for giving me a chance to share this experience with you all.
Thanks, Beauvais, and thanks everybody. I've certainly learned a lot. Kate, are you still here? Do you want to
Yep.
maybe walk us through these last few slides?
Yeah, I think what I would say to the audience on the call is it might be useful to take a photo of the next few slides because there's a lot of links, or maybe this show will go out. But there are institutional opportunities that colleges and universities can apply for. They're listed here. I think I'm not an expert enough in any of them to speak with great authority, but if you go to the next slide, there's two slides, this and the next, that are they're like design-wise very identical, but they've got some different links. If you are a student right now, or a recent alum, this is the slide for you. The Fulbright U.S. Student Program is the name of the one that applies to recent graduates and the people that apply while they're in their final year of school. The URL for that is, upper left. It can be really easy to accidentally get connected to the next one if you go to the final slide here. The Fulbright Scholar Program is the one for professionals in all career levels. That one, the website is fulbrightscholars.org. And then the social media links on both of these slides are identical, but I think it sounds a little bit superfluous to review the social media of Fulbright, but quite honestly, I hear from many people that during their application process, the little tips and tricks that they share on those websites are quite valuable. So I would encourage you to follow all those things. And the last thing I should just say is that there are real human beings on the other end of these emails and websites and whatnot. So, of course, if you're thinking about applying for a Fulbright, definitely do the research first before you contact the human. But when you get stuck, these folks at Fulbright are so helpful and ready to be there for you. I think that's all I have to say, but happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Saw a little bit of activity in the chat. Maybe not.
I have something to add to what Kate was just saying.
Absolutely.
After I knew that I was accepted into a Fulbright program, it was like radically helpful for me to contact alumni of that program as well. None of them were artists. I'm the only artist who's been in this particular position, but that community extends even past, our field, basically. There's sort of a Fulbright community globally that supports each other. And I just got so many great tips and points and things to think about that I wouldn't have known, considering I'd never been to where I was going, through that community.
So one other thing I'd like to add, I've worked with our National Office of Scholarships and Fellowships and helping people pursue Fulbrights, particularly students. And if you're an academic and you're mentoring people who might be interested in pursuing Fulbrights, there's a lot of opportunities for students, including teaching English language abroad. And there's a whole group of opportunities there. And you don't necessarily have to have a degree in English to do that. It's oftentimes a kind of cultural connection. Someone was applying to do that in France and was very involved in baseball and made connections with the Baseball Club of Paris, for example. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting ways for students to pursue Fulbrights. The other thing is I had arranged for a Fulbrighter to come to Knoxville, Tennessee, who works at the Museum of Modern Art in Cairo. And we had everything worked out through the State Department. It turned out that the museum didn't let him leave his job, so it didn't end up working. But even with all of the political turmoil, this was going to happen over the course of the whole year. It didn't quite materialize, but we have a lot of Fulbrighters who come to the United States to various American institutions. So there are ways of building, for those of you who are academics, building connections with colleagues abroad and creating opportunities at your institution for them to come work in your studios or your labs. And it's generously funded. So he was going to come in with about $3,500 a month to cover his cost of living and rent, which you can do pretty well with. And so it's like a well-funded science graduate student coming as a kind of postdoc sort of experience. So it's important to recognize that the Fulbright program helps that cultural exchange go both ways.
I think I would also add that having a Fulbright, it's really well respected in the various parts of the world in which we went. And so it's kind of a superpower to go with the Fulbright. One thing that I didn't talk about in my talk was that one of my affiliates, similar to Jasmine, was a contemporary artist. And I did a bunch of research for her as part of my Fulbright. But when I would let people know that I was a Fulbright, I mean, I was talking to premier architects and premier people, who I had with, the title of Fulbright and understanding that kind of international program. It opened doors for me to speak to people that I would have both felt nervous to approach and maybe wouldn't have taken a meeting with me otherwise. So I think, we don't always know a lot about it here, but in a lot of other countries, it's a very well respected and gives you a lot of access and respect and sort of mutual capacity to move things forward.
Yeah, and I would add that post Fulbright, there's Fulbright associations all over the country. In New York, it's incredibly active. There's several different events, that happen weekly. So all the Fulbrighters get together. Also staying in membership with Fulbright, and there's also Fulbright alumni scholars. So you can continue. It's not just like a one and done. You can stay part of the network for the rest of your life, and also continuing going on them as an alumni. And then there's the One World Alliance. I have on a number of occasions actually hosted people for dinner in my home. They ask you, like, students come from other countries and they ask for people to, host them for a dinner at your house. So I have them come for dinner and give them a studio tour.
One other thing that just occurred to me to throw in for any students on the call or future student viewers of this recording, each or most institutions have a person on campus, either a staff or a faculty member, called the Fulbright Program Advisor. It gets abbreviated to FPA. If you don't know who that is on your campus, you can go on the US Fulbright Online website and look it up by institution. And that person's job, or at least some of their job, is to help folks who are applying for Fulbright. So if that pertains to anybody, that's a really useful resource, usually pertinent to current students and recent alumni.
Those people are amazing. I would have never gotten a Fulbright without the guidance of that person at Ohio University.
Great. Thank you all for your advice. Thanks to everyone who tuned in this evening. We are going to take this, we've recorded this talk. We'll get it edited, get captions on it, and throw it up on the SGCI websites for the members who weren't able to join us this evening. So hopefully it can continue to be an educational resource for our members, and we'll see more printmaking Fulbrights in the future. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Blake.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See y'all later.